Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com. When we first conceived of this show, I pitched it to the higher-ups at Real America's Voice as a place to do real news and investigations, the kind of thing that news reporters used to do before they all turned into overpaid opinion columnists. One such overpaid opinion columnist is none other than the New York Times' Maggie Haberman, who, as soon as I started publishing facts, evidence-based facts, from the hard drive from hell, that's Hunter Biden's laptop, Maggie Haberman suddenly unfollowed me on social media. Interesting that, isn't it? That not only does the mainstream media lie about the details that are being revealed, they won't cover what is being revealed, but they don't actually want to see the details that are being revealed. As far as they're concerned, if they do not see it, it doesn't exist. Except it very, very much does exist. And every single minute we go through more and more and more of these files on the hard drive from hell, the more we find. And I realize there's some exasperation out there. I realize that there are people out there saying, hey, dump the whole thing. We need the whole thing. I want to see the whole thing right now. It doesn't work like that because of the nature of a lot of these images. There are people's intimate images on this drive that we do not have authority to publish from those people. I'm not going down for revenge porn. There are social security numbers, bank account numbers, tax returns. All of that has to be ignored. That's not the story, and that's not what is supposed to come out. So park your exasperation for a minute and trust that the people who have been trying to get this information out to you for a very, very long time, years and years and years, are going to do their job that they've said that they were going to do all along. We publish a news story, if not 2 or 3, every single day, and so is Jack Posobiec, so is Jim Hoft, so is Jack Maxey, so Rudy Giuliani, so is Bernie Kerik, so is Natalie Winters. And the group of people dealing with this wealth of information is increasing as more and more people get access and figure out what's going on here. So I want to give you all our communal words. You might be looking at your watch and going, well, but there's 8 days until the election. Believe me, this is not just something that is going to impact this election. It already is, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. Our guests on the show today, Steve Cortes from the Trump campaign and Phil Klein from gotfreedom.org, it's already impacting the election campaign. You look at Joe Biden calling a lid for the last 8 days of the campaign. Not going to hear or see from Joe Biden for the next 8 days. But some of this stuff is going to take years and years to pass out. Not from us, for law enforcement. For the law enforcement who should have been dealing with this from last year. Who should have been enforcing the law for Hunter Biden, his business associates, and the big guy. The big guy being Joe Biden, or Junior, as he is in Hunter Biden's text messages. You know, this is the guy who we told you last week said that he would do anything within his power to get $1 million that Hunter Biden's business partner, Eric Schwerin, apparently owed him. And what happened over the weekend after we reported this out, after you heard about it here on this show? None other than Eric Schwerin locked his Twitter account. Now you tell me, you be the judges. If you're innocent, if there's nothing to hide, if it's all Russian disinformation, if these emails aren't real, if the hard drive isn't real, if these interactions aren't true, then why, if you're Eric Schwerin, do you lock your Twitter account? Doesn't make sense, does it? Even if you're taking incoming from a lot of people, which I do every day. You don't lock your account. If it's not true, you say this isn't true, and you go, ha ha ha, you're idiots. But Eric Schwerin isn't saying that. He's locking down his social media because he knows that we know. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Eric Schwerins of the world are calling up the FBI right now and saying, hey, you wanna do a deal? Because there's a deal to be done. You know, today was the first time, and I want you guys to appreciate this. Today was the first time that we even got to the voice memo section on the hard drive. There's 112,000 emails, hundreds of thousands of images, text messages, and yeah, there are voice memos. I'm going to be going through some of Hunter Biden's self-declared genius over the course of the show tomorrow. So make sure you stick around here on the National Pulse when we come back from our forthcoming sponsored messages. We're going to be going through some of the news stories that we've broken over the last couple of days, including today. And look, if you haven't seen this yet, you've got to understand that there are big smoking guns here that the New York Times and Maggie Haberman won't report out. Where's Politico? Where's Axios? Where's the Washington Post? Where's the LA Times? Who was writing? The LA Times was writing about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and Jeff Cooper back in 2012. You're telling me suddenly they don't care? They've forgotten who these people are? They were the ones writing these articles, asking important questions. Credit to them in 2012. But no credit to them now. Well, there are new reporters in town, and we'll be back with one of them, Natalie Winters, in a minute. Get to one of the stories that we've been reporting out this morning. Natalie Winters joins me in studio here now to go through it all. Natalie, this is one of the most damning pieces of evidence that's on this drive. And as far as I can tell, I mean, you've written the majority of it. Look, I just found the thing. You've written the majority of this article, right? Has anybody else picked this up yet?
No, no one has picked this up. As you said before, some of the individuals involved in this, whether you're talking about Jeff Cooper from Eudora Global, which is one of the many shady investment firms that Hunter Biden was involved with, or even Miguel Alemán Magnani, there's been some interest in these individuals, but no one has really chased down the business connections, often the under the table, even though there's some interesting White House visitor logs that do corroborate the story we have up at the polls. But for the most part, under the table, shady business dealings going on between these individuals.
So let's unpack it for people. The story is Hunter Biden, quote, brought every single person to the White House and the VP's house that a foreign business partner wanted, and appears to have received resort villa stays and artwork in exchange. So let's go through this line by line, Natalie. The vice president's son, Hunter Biden, has an email in his inbox, or his outbox rather, and it's from him to an account called Malaman M. And Malaman M is Miguel Alemán Magnani. Now, Magnani is the grandson of a former Mexican president and son of one of Mexico's richest men. He's also the CEO of the Mexican airline Interjet. And I'm going to read this email, and then you Natalie, dissect for us what this means and how it plays in. And I want to read this in full here, and I want to make sure that we get it up on the screen as well. Do we know which one we have for on screen here? I want to make sure that we get this right so that everybody can read this themselves, Natalie. I think it's probably somewhere around 12. Yeah, 12. Let's get image 12 up on the screen here. Can we do that? Okay, great. Perfect. So the audience, you've got this up in front of you. This isn't the figment of my imagination or Natalie Winters' imagination. And I'll keep saying this, by the way. This is how journalism used to be. This is how we used to do the news before Maggie Haberman got her talons on it. Okay, so this is an email, as you can see, Robert Hunter Biden. It's Robert Biden, Robert Hunter Biden. Subject line, me and Jeff. That's sent on February 24th, 2016 at 3 p.m. And it's to Miguel and his business partner, Jeff Cooper. And the email says this: we are arriving late tonight on Air Force 2 to Mexico City. We will be there for Thursday. I am attending meeting with President N with Dad. That's Joe Biden. Jeff is with me on lane, and I assume he means on plane, and we will be with us all day. Would love to see you, but you never respond. I am really upset by it. You respond when it's something you need. You are the most generous person I know, but WTF. We have so many great things to do together, and I want you at the plane when the VP lands with your mum and dad, and you completely ignore me. I've looked at what your family has done and want to follow in that tradition. And you always say you will help, but I haven't heard from you since I got you a meeting for Carlos and your dad. We have been talking about business deals and partnerships for 7 years. And I really appreciate you letting me stay at your resort villa. But I've brought every single person you have ever asked me to the effing White House and the Vice President's house and the inauguration, and then you go completely silent. I don't hear from you for months. I don't know what it is that I did, but I'd like to know why I've delivered on every single thing you've ever asked me, and you make me feel like I've done something to offend you. RHB. Natalie, in that email alone, there is evidence that the son of the vice president is using his position as his son. Remember, he's not in government. He doesn't have a position in the White House. These deals aren't his to make. And by the way, even if he was, that would be called a quid pro quo, right? But from outside the White House, when his father has gone on the record a multitude of times to say I had nothing to do with Hunter's business deals, you can see in this from this one email that we've uncovered here at the National Pulse that he was trading off his father's position.
And remember, it's not just that he's not a government official. He's also not a registered foreign agent. He's never registered with the Foreign Agent Registration Act. You only see a couple registrations with the lobbying database for domestic lobbying affairs, but nothing related to this individual or any of these accounts. But I don't even think it requires much editorializing on our part. In the words of Hunter Biden, he says, quote, I've delivered on every single thing you've ever asked. And again, this is also interesting because this is dovetailing with one of Joe Biden's trips to Mexico in early 2016, where he actually dunked on President Trump during that visit. Meanwhile, his son was in the back inking business deals, which we'll get into a little bit later, with this individual. And again, this family that he's saying he'd like to follow in the footsteps of, they have deep ties to obviously Mexican politics, but Interjet, the airline that his best friend serves as the CEO of, was embroiled in debt controversy, refusing to pay it back, worth tens of millions of dollars. So definitely some shady business deals going on. And as you continue to read the story, you see again not only that he offered meetings at the White House, which again records from the Obama now archived website talking about individuals who filled out the application to get inside the White House or get inside the executive office building, at least on 2 occasions. Miguel Alemán Magnani and at least one other family member from either it was his dad or his wife or his brother, they were at the White House. And what's interesting is when you look at the logs, most individuals who come to visit the White House, you can see identification numbers, the city that they're from. Interestingly enough, with these individuals, it's totally blanked out. You can't see anything. There's no real metadata describing who these people are.
Say that again. The White House visitor logs have the metadata scrubbed from them for those people?
Yes, and it's not just these individuals, but it is certainly curious when you're looking at all these. Again, it's like tens of thousands of people,
right.
But it's certainly interesting when you see a meeting just between Miguel Alemán Magnani and his dad, and there's absolutely no information, no metadata, no identification numbers. The only thing you see is the date. You don't even see the nature of the meeting or even what office, what agency, or even if it was the White House, the Oval, or the executive office building.
When we come back, I'm going to take you through some more of the gory details of this, including the evidence that Hunter Biden appeared to receive some gifts in exchange for all of this access that he was given. Remember, if this was Donald Trump Jr., if this was Ivanka Trump, if this was Eric Trump, if this was Tiffany Trump, if this was Jared Kushner, this would be leading every single newspaper right now, and instead it's pin drop silence. We'll be back with more in a second. Welcome back to the National Pulse. I want to continue on with this story that we break this morning on the National Pulse. Hunter Biden brought every single person to the White House VP's house that foreign business partners wanted. Appeared to have received resort villa stays and artwork in exchange. Let's put up image 13 here, guys. I want to make sure that the audience can see this for themselves. That Hunter Biden appears to have received gifts in exchange for what he was giving, which is U.S. government access at the highest levels. Not his to give, of course, but not that it seems that Joe Biden ever stopped him. Took him apparently on Air Force Two anytime he wanted to go. So this is from Joan. Joan Pugh is effectively Hunter Biden's personal assistant. Natalie, what does this email tell us?
Well, the most important part of this email is number 2 on the, quote, outstanding to-do section. And what's listed, number 2, Miguel sent you a piece of artwork, need to say thank you. Again, that's coming from Miguel Alemán Magnani.
Well, we'll just be clear, that doesn't say Miguel Alemán Magnani. We don't know if there's another Miguel, but it certainly ties into the pattern.
It would definitely tie into the pattern. Again, another email that you see that the fun following this in the story is the fact that Hunter Biden was invited to Miguel's 50th birthday party.
Yeah, let's go to clip image 14 here, guys. 14 is this invitation. It's up there now, Natalie.
It's written in Spanish. We have the translated version up on the National Pulse, but he says that he postponed his birthday, but nonetheless, the takeaway is that Hunter Biden was initially and, again, subsequently invited to the follow-up celebration. But what's also interesting, when you get to the next section of the article, which we entitled, Once Upon a Crime in Mexico.
How did you like that?
Very well.
Thank you. So that was going to be my next question for you. What does this all mean? Who are these people he was granting access to, and what were the business deals? Remember, in the first email, this isn't just like, and I could totally get on board with this if Joe Biden's son wants to take his buddies in to see the VP's residence or the White House. That's fine. Like, if your dad works somewhere cool and you want to take your buddies in, that's understandable. I get that. Lots of White House staff take their friends and family members in from time to time. But you see in the first email, he says, we have been talking about business deals and partnerships for 7 years. He's bemoaning the fact that despite him taking Miguel Alemán and his buddies into the White House, he's not getting any kickback as a result of this. So what were the kickbacks he was looking at?
Well, and remember, too, this is part of a broader picture where you see Hunter Biden's and his business associates' MO is leveraging the Biden name, leveraging the vice presidential connections, and even through Vice President Joe Biden leveraging meetings with other individuals as part of White House staff and the administration. But what's interesting, in one of the emails, I believe you have the clip list, but on I believe it was January 27th, 2015, you see a long email from Hunter Biden talking about how all the stakeholders in this deal, so that's Miguel Alemán Magnani, Jeff Cooper, Devon Archer, they talk about how they need to figure out kind of the compensation aspect of this deal. But buried in point 3 on the email is the quote, finally, once we have the above accomplished, again, that's referencing the compensation packages, we should be in a very good position to make the most of the planned meeting on 2/27 in Mexico City. Now, Joe Biden was in Mexico City on February 25th, again, as I said, denigrating President Trump, talking about the importance of Mexico to his campaign and their relationship with the United States. But it's interesting, the timing. Again, it's unclear if Hunter Biden actually took Air Force Two to Mexico City because the Secret Service logs that have been obtained don't show him traveling on Air Force Two. It's unclear if he traveled commercial, private, maybe with Miguel Alemán Magnani, who knows? But again, Joe Biden, the Biden family is definitely being used as a point of leverage.
Yeah, I mean, these are just some of the most extraordinary developments that I've ever seen, coming straight from the Oval Office. This is basically being done in the Oval Office. We have that picture now of Hunter Biden meeting with Barack Obama. I think it's the 4th of April 2016. And then about a week later on Hunter's device is this White House headed notepaper that says $400,000 salary, $2 million a year for 5 years. We'll get the images up from that tomorrow when we go through that story in its specifics. But I want the audience to understand how severe this is. again, think about this if it was one of the Trump children. If you saw that email coming from Donald Trump Jr., right? I have done everything I can. I brought everyone you wanted into the White House. Sorry, the effing White House, as Hunter Biden calls it, and the vice president's house and the inauguration. And then you go completely silent on what business deals and partnerships that they've been talking about for 7 years. You tell me, anybody who's MAGA or America First oriented, if you saw that coming from Donald Trump Jr., if you wouldn't get a lump in your throat and go, uh-oh, this is pretty bad, because it would be. This is from Hunter Biden, and this is from not long ago. This is the end of the Obama-Biden administration, or catastrophe. February 24th, 2016. And what else happened in 2016? Let's put number 9. Let's put image 9 if we can on the screen here. This is what happened in 2016. Missy Owens, that used to work in the administration, she writes to Hunter Biden, and she says, you can cover my face, I don't mind. She says to Hunter Biden, hey, is this our Eric Schwerin, who's getting an appointment from the administration? How did we find that one, and do you think we can find something for my mum? I wanted to do it. I think my mum needs it more than I. What do you think? Let's get number 10 up, which is Hunter Biden's response. Image 10 is Hunter Biden's response. And it says, I didn't know that she wanted to do any of these. Eric asked for one of these the day after election in 2008. You know better than me what are real and interesting appointments. Let's go through the list with Steve and see what makes sense. I don't know how much 2016 and nepotism plays into it. Natalie, who's Steve in that email?
Steve Ricchetti, that was Joe Biden's chief of staff at the time.
Joe Biden's chief of staff going through a list of appointments with Biden family members, and they used the term nepotism. Again, imagine that was a Trump.
And he's a senior advisor to the Biden campaign. So for those who think that this Biden administration would be any different from the Obama administration, you're severely mistaken.
I'm dumbfounded by the fact that you've still got blue checkmark journalists out there going, this isn't real, this is Russian disinformation. Come and see it. I'll show it to you. We'll be back in a moment. From YouTube's end, so we apologize. I mean, it's nothing to do with us, but surely they don't want stories about Hunter Biden not getting out there. Interesting. You can make sure you watch us on Apple TV, on Roku, on the Real America's Voice app as well. You can get us on Facebook, on the National Pulse Facebook page, on Steve Bannon's War Room page, and beyond. So we try and make sure that we're in as many places as possible. And of course, Dish Channel 219, Comcast in Chicago. And we're very grateful for everybody who's managing to seek us out and find us today, because there's so much to go through and there's so much more breaking to do with this hard drive. Every day, there's going to be stuff, every day. And believe me when I tell you that I am already exhausted from going through this stuff. My eyes are turning square from going through hundreds of thousands of documents every day, and other people are too. This is not just us. Plenty of people breaking news on this right now. Gateway Pundit and Jim Hoff this morning breaking another bombshell. You've got just so much more information. There are texts from within the family that corroborate a lot of what Jim Hoff reported out this morning, and we'll get some of those up as the day continues and into tomorrow as well. I can promise you this: we are working as fast, as hard, and as diligently as possible to make sure that we are responsibly reporting as much of this out as can be reported. Remember, we are not going to report people's bank account details or social security numbers. I'm not going to be posting images of girls that they haven't approved, that they want out there. This is the story here, to me, as far as I am concerned, is how much Joe Biden allowed his son to profit off their names. And this is why Joe Biden has called a lid on his campaign for the next 8 days. And this is why I truly believe that they know they are down, that the Democrats are in panic. I said it this weekend. I said the Democrats are in panic, and people said, nah, they're not in panic. Look, Trump's down in the polls. BS. Total BS. I am telling you, so as the man who brought you the correct predictions on Brexit, on Emmanuel Macron's victory, on Jeremy Corbyn being announced as the leader of the Labour Party, on Donald Trump's victory in 2016, I am telling you, as it stands right now, if you all go out there and do what you're supposed to do, vote, Donald J. Trump will be re-elected. Mark my words. You look at the crowds, the difference in the crowds, the difference in the number. You want to talk about numbers here? Why don't we go into Hawkfish's? This is Michael Bloomberg's analytics thing. Go into Hawkfish's numbers. They're doing a day-to-day in Florida right now. Democrats think they should be 3/4 up on the early voting. They're not. It's like 51% to 49%, Democrat to Republican. I think we can bring on Steve Cortes here. Steve Cortes is one of the senior advisors to the Trump 2020 campaign. Steve, you could probably hear it in my voice. I am very, very agitated today, not least because we're breaking story after story, bombshell after bombshell from Hunter Biden's hard drive, and Maggie Haberman's still got her fingers in her ears going, Russian disinformation. Steve, this is so far away from foreign intervention or Russian collusion or anything like that. I don't know how these people are going to hold their heads up high walking down K Street as they do every day, calling themselves reporters anymore. What say you?
Right. No, listen, it's absolutely shameful. There's a crisis of journalism in this country, and largely within the legacy platforms, no journalism, I would in fact say. And we need a healthy fourth estate in this country for our republic to operate properly. So it's bigger than even just this campaign, as damning as their behavior is recently. There is a willful decision by folks like Maggie Haberman. And look, I think we need to name names. And all of these folks out there, there's a willful decision to literally pretend that this is somehow Russian disinformation. The laptop did not come from Russia. The laptop is from hell. That's what I know you call it. That's what we're calling it here. The hard drive from hell or the laptop from hell. But the laptop is legitimate. Remember this. No one on Team Biden, not Joe, not Hunter, nor any operatives, have ever disputed the authenticity of these emails. That's critical. So that's a canard. It's a ridiculous diversion to pretend that they're not authentic. They clearly are. The question that really needs to be asked of Joe Biden, and I think we're going to have to rely on a local reporter somewhere to do this, because it would be the only opportunity between now and Election Day for Joe to face this scrutiny. Somebody needs to ask him, I believe, just the simple question, are you the big guy? Okay, he will surely deny it. And the follow-up then has to be, well, then who is? Because to me, there's so many damning details here, but that to me is the crux of it, right? Is the fact that he was getting a 10% kickback of a dirty deal with the foremost enemy of the United States.
Steve, let me stop you right there. I don't think he'd deny it, because I think he knows he's the big guy in these emails. How can you deny it and then, the off chance he's elected president, has lied to the American public about a kickback deal that he's getting from his son's dodgy businesses? I don't think he'd deny it. I think he obfuscates, right? He dodges the question, like he's been dodging every single question on this. Remember, there's not been a straight up denial from the campaign about any of the details of this. They're just kind of like, oh, well, Joe Biden never held any stock in these companies.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I actually just I make these chalk talks for the campaign, and I post them on my Twitter, and I just made one on that today. I said it's the non-denial denial. His spokesman used such tortured language. I will bet you that they went over that language for hours to decide, how do we look like we're denying it, but we don't actually say anything? Yeah, they said we didn't hold any stock. Well, no kidding. By the way, the Wall Street Journal, which really disappoints me. Again, I believe in naming names right here. I think the Wall Street Journal, which used to be the greatest paper in America, perhaps the world, in my opinion, their reporting is a disaster on this as well. They came out and said, we didn't find any evidence in the documents of Joe Biden. Well, of course not. I mean, no blank, Sherlock. Do you think they're going to put Joe Biden's name on these documents? Of course not. Or to the point of the denial from his campaign, the non-denial denial from Andrew Bates. Nobody's saying that there is a stock certificate sitting somewhere that has the name Joe Biden in big, bold, in all caps. Of course not. That's not how shady arrangements work. There would be an understanding that he participates in the deal. So you're right. There is so much just shameful behavior out there. But here's the thing. We can get mad about it, and we should. but then we have to also take action. So thank goodness for shows like yours. Thank goodness for War Room, for talk radio, for social media when it's not suppressing us, the Trump campaign. I will promise you this much, Raheem. We here at the Trump campaign in Arlington, Virginia, we are on this issue and we're going to stay on it until Election Day. Not just because it's important for us and because we think it can help us win, but more importantly, we have a patriotic obligation to do this. We are on the precipice, perhaps, of this country potentially electing somebody who's been compromised by the CCP to be our commander-in-chief. Now, again, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm confident. I like our momentum. But I'm saying we have not just a campaign duty, not just a partisan duty here, but a patriotic obligation to make sure that the American people are properly informed.
Steve, we got to go to a break here now. Are you available to hang over for a few minutes? All right, great. When we come back, I want to ask you a couple of questions and maybe even get you to tell your big guy, Donald Trump, what we're about to drop on the National Pulse tomorrow. It's big. Stay tuned. Steve Cortes, Raheem Kassam in a moment. Hunter Biden and I don't agree on much, but there's one thing we do agree on. That is one of the latest small nuggets that we've pulled out from this hard drive, where he called Bill Clinton an a-hole and said he looked like S. See, we're committed to pulling out both the informative, deep dive, investigative work, but also what I call the forcing function stories, which is the more gossipy stuff that the media actually looks at and goes, well, you know, that does sound like the Clinton-Biden rivalry that we've known about for decades. And therefore, they're lured into the story. Now, look, between now and the election day, maybe we don't get any big coverage from the mainstream media on this. I don't know. Every single day I try to coax them into the story. I say to Jake Tapper here, I'll bring you the drive. You can go through it with me. Maggie Haberman, come over anytime. Actually, I don't want Maggie knowing where I live. Come to the studio, Maggie, anytime. Come to Wharton's, whatever you want, okay? But nobody's bitten so far. Why? It's for the same reason that Biden-Harris signs adorn almost every expensive townhouse on Capitol Hill. The Biden-Harris ticket has the entrenched political class vote sewn up. Make of that what you will. Steve Cortes joins us on the line now, the 2020 Trump campaign senior advisor. Steve, thank you for carving out the time. I know you're very busy today doing local media. Is local media covering this?
Yes, and that is good news, because there's a lot of bad news when you look at the national outlets. And I think those of us who are in politics, we probably at times tend to exaggerate, to be honest, the importance of cable news, because it's so important in our lives. And look, I'm somebody who worked for all three major cable news networks previously, so I understand their importance. But let's also remember, there are millions and millions of Americans who never watch cable news, who may not even have cable at all, and they watch local news. So one of my key roles here at the campaign is I am doing just a flurry of local news television appearances all over the country, do it by satellite and by Skype and so forth, right here from Trump campaign headquarters. So if your audience is in battleground state, they've probably seen me locally. I've been all over Florida, Arizona. And here's the good news. There's still some real journalism going on in local newsrooms. A lot of times they're young people. I think they generally lean a little left. They show their hand a bit, but they do it in a way that is fair. They're not just completely narrative driven. So thankfully, be reassured, this story is getting out. Now, it's still crap that it's not getting out from the major national outlets, right? That the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, NBC, ABC, I'm not at all letting them off the hook for their dereliction of duty. But do know that people like me are able, thankfully, via some honest brokers out there in local news, are able to tell these stories and to at least plant that seed in a voter's mind so that hopefully they're encouraged to do their own homework.
Steve, a lot of people are reaching out to me at the moment and saying, hey, look, there are so many bombshells in this thing. And I understand the common man's frustration about how they're having to come out, right? It's coming out on the National Pulse and it's coming out on Gateway Pundit, and they're saying, hey, we're not getting enough eyeballs on it. Look, I get it. I'm not claiming to be as big as CNN or something like that, but we do what we can, right? And for the audience out there, it is your job now to monopolize the media space, to capitalize on this, to magnify these stories on our behalf, share them with your friends and family members, etc., etc. But the question I keep getting asked as well, Steve, is how come we're not seeing any campaign advertisements amplifying these stories?
Right. Well, listen, there have been some, but I don't think there's as much. But you are right. Look, we are in all ways a grassroots movement, the America First movement, and this campaign is largely ground game based. So we do need the army for Trump. We need the deplorables out there to be activated in their circles of influence. But I can promise you this, I am doing my level best every chance I get to make sure that we laser in on this issue. You know, my view, the closing argument for the campaign in the last week and a day is the affirmative side on the economy. That is our most significant value proposition for voters, and it's the number one issue on their minds. And then on the opposition defining side, we need to talk about the laptop from hell and who is the big guy, because all evidence and all common sense tells us it's Joe Biden. If it indeed is, he's compromised by our most significant and dangerous enemy in the world. I believe if we continue to pound those two themes home, the reason to vote for Trump, the reason that Joe Biden is disqualified, if we continue to do that, I believe the deplorables are going to turn out en masse in states like Pennsylvania, where the president's barnstorming today, and we're going to win this election.
Steve, you'll be really tickled tomorrow when you hear some of the information that Hunter Biden gives away on his own voice memos. In the meantime, I want to let you go so you get a breath between your next interview. I know you're back to back at the moment. Steve Cortes, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for everything you're doing, Raheem.
The news. We continue to do the news as best as it can be done in a situation like this. Natalie Winters joining me in studio here as well. Also want to make mention of something, ladies and gentlemen, on the site. If you go to thenationalpulse.com, you'll see in the navigation menu now, we've added a little tab called Swag, where you can get your Where's Hunter mask, or your Take Down the CCP mug, or your Biden's Laptop Matters hoodie. Let me show you some images of those in the last segment of this show today. Don't worry about getting the images up there right now. We'll tease them to the production team, but we will show you some of the things. Swag from the National Pulse Swag store. Natalie, look, let's reset here a little bit, because it's very easy to get in the weeds on this stuff, and also easy to get carried away with nuggets and minutiae. The big picture being this, right? You've been there with me when we've been going through this device, and there are hundreds of thousands of data points on this thing. You scroll through the pictures, you see some things that you just can't unsee, right? You go through the emails, and every single email that is not a spam or a junk or a Mike Allen at Politico email, which is spam and junk, by the way, but every single one of these emails kind of links to something else. And you have to cross-reference with something else. And they use acronyms and nicknames and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of people are asking me the question, and you can probably hear I'm quite defensive about it. Why is it taking so long? Why is it taking so long? No, but I want to give a clear answer to people. I don't want to just deflect and go, because it takes long. It's because of the kind of mercurial nature of Hunter Biden himself. Sometimes he responds, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he has somebody else respond for him. Sometimes he asks his uncle, who are you? I've seen that.
It's kind of like cutting off Medusa's head. When you think you understand, when you think you know who this individual is, then there's 7 more data points that crop up and you're confused. So it's definitely a hefty task to do, but it's really interesting. As you said, we've just gotten into the voice memos, which again, if this is Russian disinformation, the fact that you have Hunter Biden speaking on this laptop, confirming that he knew he was being recorded, certainly undermines that.
Oh, you broke some news there. So in this voice memo, Hunter Biden confirms that he knows he's being recorded by the person in the room with him.
Exactly.
On his phone.
On his phone. You said,
so it's not the Russians.
Yeah, you said in your opening monologue that the media likes to will things into existence even if they don't see it. Well, they do that the same with the Russian disinformation trope, because we know.
We'll be right back after this break. Remember, we're an action-orientated show. Orientated? Whatever. I want you guys to take an action right now. Go to thenationalpulse.com. If you like what we do, go to thenationalpulse.com/support. If you want to support us getting more of this info out faster, we need the resources, we need the manpower, we need things to help us do that. nationalpulse.com/support. And we just introduced a new swag store as another mechanism. If you don't want to just hand over your cash to us, I understand, I get it. You can get something back, such as a Biden's Laptop Matters shirt. We've got Take Down the CCP mugs, and we've got Where's Hunter masks. They're all available now at thenationalpulse.com/swag, SWAG, at thenationalpulse.com/swag. All right. You probably noticed that the Democrats are in panic at the moment. There was an article in Yahoo News written by the LA Times that said, hey, you know, we've got permanent post-traumatic stress disorder since 2016. We're fearing everything. I've noticed a massive ramp up in the Antifa activity, especially on social media. They're really preparing for November 3rd and 4th to take to the streets to occupy Washington, D.C. That doesn't sound to me like the behavior of an entity, a group, a side that thinks it's going to win. And another way it thinks it can perhaps influence the result of the election is something we've talked about on this show for a long time, something Phil Klein has been on since the very beginning, which is the pouring of money into a lot of these early voting, mail-in voting, and get-out-the-vote systems. So, Phil, welcome back to the show here. We only got about 6 minutes left. I'm going to throw it over to you. What's the latest, for instance, with Mr. Zuckerberg and his whole plan to steal the election?
I have a task for you, and that is, where are the Zuckerbucks? Because he's flowing these monies directly into urban areas to turn out the Hillary Clinton vote for Joe Biden. And here's the problem with this. First of all, it's unprecedented. He's given a total of $400 million. Now, Congress appropriated $400 million under the CARES Act to take care of elections during COVID. Zuckerberg has matched the amount that the federal government has given. And he is determining where to put those funds, and he's given it to government. So what you have right now are in cities where Zuckerberg money is present, it's easier than ever before to vote. You have drop boxes out there on the corners. You have mobile pickup units on ballots. You have executive orders of governors saying we don't have to worry about comparing signatures anymore. We're just going to grab all the ballots we can. Then you go out in rural America where the Zuckerbucks aren't there to the extent that they are in cities. And you've got Joe and Mary in their 80s, have heart conditions, are concerned about COVID, and would have to drive 60 miles round trip to vote because the blue state governors have made it harder to vote in person in those areas than in a generation. So what you have with the combination of Zuckerberg giving government money and governors shutting down in-person polling, which is preferred, by the way, by Republican voters, you have traditional Democrat areas with ease of voting, and you have traditional Republican areas that have great barriers to voting. And America has only done that one time before, and that was the Democratic Party of the Deep South around the turn of the 20th century, when they made it almost impossible for blacks to vote and easy for whites to vote. This should not be the role of government. Government shouldn't play favorites in elections. If Mr. Zuckerberg wants to give the money, give it to the state legislature that's obligated by law to share that equally with the voters of each state.
Well, so here's the thing, Phil. I mean, a lot of people will hear, especially the left will amplify, isn't it great? Mark Zuckerberg's matching government funds. He's making it easier to vote. Having a system whereby it is easy to vote must manifestly be a good thing, but not if it's selectively applied. And that's what you're telling us here. It's being selectively applied to where Zuckerberg believes he can get out the Democrat vote. So tell us, What is the impact in real terms here as far as you see it? Because I'm looking at some of these Florida numbers, for instance, and I'm actually seeing the Democrats in full-fledged panic. They think they're up. They think they should have been up 70% to 30% in early voting numbers. They're up about 51, maybe 52% to 48, 49%. So is this even working?
Well, you go to Philadelphia, where Mr. Zuckerberg, and here's the problem, Mr. Zuckerberg can spend his own money the way he wants it. But when he's paying election officials who work for the state, that's a concern. And in Philadelphia, his group said, look, Philadelphia, you must have 800 in-person polling places for the city of Philadelphia by the election, or we're taking our money back. And Philadelphia wrote back and said, we'll do it, Mr. Zuckerberg, with your money. And we anticipate that our turnout, because we do this, will increase 200,000 votes over 2016. Now, in 2016, the president won Pennsylvania with about 50, 60,000 vote margin. Those 200,000 votes in turnout in Philadelphia, if the turnout is just like how Philadelphia has voted in the past, that means 170,000 more votes for Biden than for Hillary Clinton in 2016. You flip the election right there, just because they've made it easier to vote, and Zuckerberg has ordered the city through CTCL to increase polling places. So yes, this is what campaigns do, but we have campaign finance limits and we have things like that.
Right.
This is not what government should do. We want Philadelphia to turn out, but we do not want Westmoreland, Pennsylvania to turn out.
Right. Phil, it's extraordinary work that you guys are doing, and we're always very grateful for your time. Can you tell our audience where they can find out more?
Thank you. It's at www.got-freedom.com. We also have a Facebook page, Got Freedom, but www.got-freedom.com.
Phil Klein, amazing work. Thank you so much for joining me. I wish we had more time, but with the hard drive from hell and everything else that's going on here, we're limited, but we're going to have you back on pretty soon. Phil, thank you again.
All right. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have no idea where that hour just went, but I know where the next couple of hours are going to go. More research on our behalves, through the emails, through the voice memos, through the text messages. And any, heads up, any mainstream journalist wants to look at this stuff, by all means, come along, give me a text, give me a call, drop me a DM, tweet at me, whatever you want, get my cell number from somebody that we have mutual friends with. I'm sure you know people. It's all here, and it's waiting for you to report on it. We'll be back with more at 10 a.m. tomorrow on The War Room and 3 p.m. here in the National Post.